Okay, we're good to go. I shouldn't go live now.
Hi, good afternoon. Am I
Hello,
audible?
hello.
Hello, 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 hello. I see we've
It's
got a few
morning,
more people
actually.
still coming. Oh, good morning in America. Good morning in America. Good afternoon from South Africa.
Yeah.
We've got a few people that have joined us in the room. Let's give it a couple more minutes before we get started. Welcome to all of you. Let me see who's in the room. George, I see a familiar name and a familiar face. And I think Vedette, we haven't met in person, but we are connected online. So thank you so much for coming through. I'm going to stop sharing. It'll be lovely to see the beautiful faces behind the names. If you can, switch on your cameras.
We have to actually, I don't think there's that functionality. We need to bring
There's a
them over.
functionality. Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah.
Well, this is something we've been looking forward to for a really, really, really long time. So I'm super excited to finally be having this conversation. As I was saying, it is a good afternoon from South Africa. We are just coming off our Heritage Day celebration, so still in a bit of a holiday vibe. And I'm really so excited to be having this session today. My name is Lungiswa Mzimba. Most people call me Lu, but I'm essentially just a creative facilitator who loves to work with supporting social purpose leaders, really, that are leading and doing great, amazing work, whether it's in strategy, in brand, in development, in fundraising, you name it. Today, I have the immense pleasure of getting into a quick fire chat with Dr. Keratilwe Mokhodzi. So this is a quick fire chat. We're not going to really take up too much of your time. And before I introduce Keratilwe, just to give you an overview of our session for today, I really just want her to share on her journey. So giving perspectives and insights on her journey so far as a leader working in the space. And then hopefully we'll have some time to open up the room to some Q&A. For those that also just have some curiosities that you want to ventilate with her, it will be great to hear from you as well. And then we'll wrap up with some closing remarks. And that will be 3/4 of an hour. Hopefully, we don't take up much time beyond that. Dr. Keratilwe, great to see you again. I loved working with you, so really warm welcome. You are joining us from Chatham today, right? Or are you in a different part of the States? Still in
Uh,
Chatham.
I'm in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So yes, it's 9:36 on our time. And
Yeah.
thanks for arranging this, Lungiswa.
Yeah. Okay, great. Welcome to all of you once again. And for those of you who are not familiar with Dr. Keratilwe, just a brief intro. She is an assistant professor, a researcher, and a coach who works both with students and professionals to activate and to embed social impact thinking. She's a philanthropy advocate, so doing really amazing work in that space as well. And as a academic who educates and coaches on sustainable development, her real passion actually lies in teaching, in education, in helping others to learn in order to support economic reforms through social entrepreneurship and also through social responsibility. She's a managing partner of Neo Africa Investments, which is a privately held social purpose entity. And really at the heart of what she does is inspiring a vision of a connected world, and where we are really all working towards a shared prosperity and a belief in an Africa that has African solutions by Africans. So great to be having this conversation with you. We're just going to dive right into it. So just a few questions for us to get some background on you, but also to take a little bit of a deeper dive into your experiences and your insights on becoming a leader within the education space, and specifically with a focus on social impact. One of the pictures that I really, really love, and I just want to put it up on screen for those who might see. It's a picture of Dr. Kiratile next to one of my heroes, the late Robert Sobukwe. This is a South African icon in our home country. And I love this because she was standing next to this particular mural and with these words that say, "I am a teacher." And I thought, how perfect is that for somebody who is a teacher at heart? So, Kiratile, why education? What is it that made you go into teaching in the first place?
Thanks, Lungiswa. So it's a very funny story because what I can say is that education chose me and not vice versa. So I actually didn't choose education. Growing up, I thought I would become an FBI agent or something in law enforcement because we used to watch those programs of FBI agents and how much power they have with those badges. So I always thought this is so cool. That's the perfect job where you can sort of get anything you want with that badge. But as I progressed and started to see how life really works, I found that I quite enjoy studying. I quite enjoy working with people, and I quite enjoy imparting knowledge onto people as well. So it
Yeah.
found its way to me because in all the jobs that I was exposed in, I worked in corporate for a couple of years before focusing on education specifically. But in every job that I had, I sort of realized myself and realized the things that I really enjoy. And also working with different people, I really, really enjoyed that. So the dots connected for me to end up in education, where I feel like it's not really work because it's something that I enjoy doing. It's something that I really look forward to doing. So education found me. And after I turned 30, it became even more urgent because I felt like we're all in this trap, like you go to work, you do your 9 to 5, you go back home. And I felt like, okay, so is this it? You're gonna work, work, work until you retire, get your pension and then die. And I'm like, that is so boring. I don't want any part of that. So I stopped the corporate life. We also had a child that needed my full attention because he wasn't well. So I needed something that can work with my circumstances. So
Yeah.
yeah, fast forward 2019, I came into this space and now I feel like it was always a calling.
Okay, amazing. So having been in this space since 2019, sort of at the intersection of educating, of learning, of teaching, and of social impact, how is it that you see that we can better infuse that kind of thinking into our everyday lives? I mean, is this something that can be applicable to other disciplines, other industries, other fields of study?
So social impact is applicable to every single industry that you can imagine because everything that you work with other people or you're doing it for some group of people. or a social cause. So the beauty of this field is that it doesn't matter if you are an engineer or you are a healthcare provider, you are a dentist, you work in the banking sector or finance, it is applicable to you as well, because at the end of the day, those financial reports that you do are going to a group of stakeholders. The engineering work that you do, you're designing buildings, you're designing infrastructure for people as well. So you are able to infuse it in whatever industry you come across. The beauty of it as well is that there's no one way to do it. So some of the really fascinating innovations that people have come up with, they come from the strangest places, you know. There's a young entrepreneur that has created a biopic hand. So he created a hand that people can use who are not able to use their hands. So people that have been amputated, he created this device that can enable them to touch things and to move things around. So it's a very beautiful technical innovation, but it's going to make a huge difference in people's lives, people who are not able to use their hands before. Other people advocate for marginalized communities. So like young children, women breaking into spaces that they've never broken into historically. All of that, you're creating something different in the way that we live. You're creating something different in society, making life better for somebody else through your work. So you don't need to be a Nobel Peace Prize. You don't need to be a politician or some expert. In the very work that you do, you should just bear in mind that this is for people. There are people at the end of the day that are going to receive this work. How can I improve it? How can I make it have a social impact on their lives? And you will find that there's various ways you can do that if you think that way. Put the people first in your planning.
That's incredible. Put the people first. I think you know, what I would, because your work centers on this as a passion and working with people. You've worked across different spaces, different sectors, corporate, academic, entrepreneurship. How do you see that your passions or your expertise has evolved across all three over time, or you know, has kind of come to bear on one point of confluence?
I actually was reflecting on this, and I feel like everything that has happened in my life and everything that I've experienced in my work has brought me to this very point. So the first jobs was very much corporate. So straight out of university, I worked for a consulting company, Eon Consulting. We did some work with Eskom and different industries. But at Eskom, we were installing solar geysers for township communities in various parts of South Africa. So without knowing too much about social impact, without even knowing anything about sustainability, that's what Eskom was trying to achieve. And through that project, we did make a difference in people's lives, because people could now access hot water. Going to school could now be easier because you don't need to go and boil water in order to be able to take your bath and go to school. So that was like my very first working experience. And then from there, I moved into IT. I didn't like IT. It was, yeah, I didn't like that. But the experience was important and necessary again, because you sort of learn how to handle people and how to handle customers, how to handle clients, and also make their systems and software better for them. And then after that, I worked at a research company. I was at Nielsen Research for quite some time. And Nielsen shaped up a lot of very important skills and even introduced the concept of social thinking and social innovation, because Nielsen was very big on corporate social responsibility. And they used to allow us as the staff members to be active as well in their CSR initiative. So we used to drive some of the initiatives there. So all of it really set it up for getting into academia. I enjoyed the field so much that I did my PhD on it, and I was able to work with nonprofit organizations throughout the African continent. So if I had not had those experiences in the previous companies, I don't think I would have had the advantage of knowledge and even networks that I have now, because all of those companies exposed me in their own ways to different skills that were necessary. So the reason why I'm even sharing this is that you may be in a job right now. You should know that there's things you can get out of it. Sometimes people go to work and they don't like their jobs or whatever, but there's something that it's doing to you to develop a new skill, to develop a new attribute that perhaps you didn't have before, and even give you some knowledge about that particular industry, because you don't know where you're going and where all of this experience will serve you in that new context that you're going to be in. So in my case, it helped very much, because even in my teaching, I can be more, you know, up to date with my students. I can share some examples from the various experiences that I've had. So you're not in a job for nothing. You're not doing the work that you do for nothing. There's definitely attributes and skills and knowledge that you're getting out of it, which will serve you for where you're going or what you're going to do in the future.
That's great. I'm just thinking, so given your experience before and currently in academia, because now you're quite deeply embedded into that space, what are you seeing as sort of the gaps, or, you know, what are the sort of the topical issues that are presenting as knowledge gaps or gaps in the way we practice or implement or design for social impact? What's kind of standing out for you?
So a couple of things. A lot of students and even practitioners in the field have been sort of trying to think about what are knowledge gaps and things that they can work on, or maybe even do some studies on in this field. So first and foremost, like I said, it's applicable to every industry. So whatever job you do, there is a way that you can embed social thinking into it. But also, how do you work across sectors? There's really nothing new under the sun anymore. So if you want to do research in the field, try to think of a way to infuse different sectors. So social work with mining, you know, social work in the healthcare sector, or look at healthcare and finance. There's ECG reporting mechanisms that have become very popular now. So how can you help organizations do their ECG reporting? Sustainability and sustainable development are very pertinent as well now, because we cannot create products or create services without bearing that aspect of sustainability in mind. So what kind of products should we be creating? Those of you that are entrepreneurs, what kind of services and products should we be putting into the market to help reduce carbon emissions, or to help reduce some of the impacts of the goods and services that we have currently? I always watch with a lot of interest these old industries, you know, like vehicles, those that make cars, Mercedes, Toyotas, you name it. They are also pushing sustainable development now, creating electronic vehicles, and trying to see how those batteries can cause less harm to the environment as well. So it's definitely the future. It's the present and the future as well. If you are going to get into business, you cannot do things the way they were done 10, 20 years ago. There's a new mindset, there's a new shift to sustainability that we all are forced to employ. So it's applicable in various stages of life. It's applicable in various industries of life as well. So you just need to find your space and bring in sustainability, bring in some green and social innovation to the work that you do.
Yeah. I think, you know, when you allude to the shifts that are happening, there's a clear, I think, consensus, or at least a shared sentiment on some level, that these shifts are happening at different speeds, and also with varying levels of capacity being invested in sustainable shifts, global north versus global south. But I'd really like to hear from you as well about what do you see as trends or shifts that are happening, particularly for this part of the world where we are in Africa, because you've worked in different parts of the world, but you've collaborated quite deliberately across Africa and also broadly within the diaspora. But how do you see those shifts kind of make it possible for more access, or more access to resources or networks, to kind of level that playing field for us in the global south?
Okay, so I still consider myself someone from the global south. It's only been a year here. I don't claim Americanism. I work here, but my job is to really bring the African context here as well. So even my students here, I always give them the African feedback. So what trends are we seeing? What are some of the pertinent things in the global south? I think now more than ever, the global south is a force to be reckoned with. So many philanthropic players in the global north are obviously working on partnerships and collaborations to get some more participation as well with global south players. But also global south are very taking their place and taking the lead in some issues as well. I mean, just a very simple recent example. We've had so much unrest, and it's still ongoing with the Gaza war in Israel and the really devastating stuff that's going on there. So it's been going on for what? It's almost a year now. And you're seeing that everybody in the world is not happy about what's going on there. But global south players are also actively contributing their voices of support, contributing even support to Palestine, to Israel as well, so that there can be some settlement to those disputes. You found that most of the time, historically, we were recipients of a lot of things, you know. So if there's unrest, which we are having as well in Sudan, there's a lot of unrest currently. You find that we were receiving assistance, receiving guidance, receiving. Now we are giving. So we are contributors to solutions. We are contributors even to aid and support. When some of the natural disasters happen, you find that African countries are also sending support to help that. Very recently in Haiti, which is on the Caribbean islands, the Kenya government has sent Kenyan support there to help them with that unrest. So we are definitely taking our place on the world stage to be a giver as well of solutions and support, and not just a recipient. We're also becoming exporters of solutions. So there are some really fascinating innovations that have come from the African continent. We are taking our place there as innovators and inventors of social solutions. So I feel like it's going in the right direction. We still have a lot of ground to cover because, like I said, we've got some social issues as well and unrest on the African continent. But if you compare now to 20 years ago, there's more giving and things coming out of the continent than going in.
Yeah, yeah, that's amazing. One thing that I picked up, and I think this is also from a podcast that I listened to that you've done previously, you seem to make a very clear distinction when it comes to philanthropy about giving, but giving in the African sense. And I'd like to hear a little bit more about that. And the reason why I ask is I want to sort of get an insight from your experiences, from your engagements with students and professionals alike. What is it that we are learning now or unlearning that is changing the way that we give? But first, just kind of maybe define, if you can, what you mean by African giving or philanthropy within the African context.
Okay. So when we speak about African philanthropy, it's very different to the conception that we have of philanthropy, the westernized conception, because the way we do things is obviously different in Africa. You are your brother's keeper. So we do sort of share things, we do support one another, you do give to one another. So you don't have to be a wealthy foundation or a person with higher resources to be able to support and help other people. You can do so at your level with the minimal resources that you have. You can support one another. So we have, therefore, different practices and ways that we practice philanthropy. And these have become recognized in the academic space as well to recognize African ways of doing things. But also, how you learn and how you give, there's a very strong correlation to that. So your upbringing and your background, growing up, the education that you receive will influence how you give. For example, if you get through a life experience, in fact, you'll actually see this trend as well with many founders of foundations. If you experience something that caused you a lot of pain or that caused you a lot of discomfort or unease in the past, like maybe you were sick and you struggled to get facilities to live or to get better, or someone in your family was very sick and you saw through that experience how difficult it was to get access to health, most likely later on, you will have a soft spot for health causes. So if it was cancer, for example, you'll find that you have a soft spot if you hear that someone else has cancer or there are resources that are needed for cancer causes because of that experience that you had, right? Or if you struggle to get a computer to get yourself educated when you're in high school, and you realize that you had such a difficult access to education and access to technology at that time, chances are later on in life, 10, 20 years, when you do have access, you will want to give back and want to support other children to not go through the same thing that you're going through. So your experiences, your exposures, things that you learn growing up, they do have a very direct correlation with how you think and also how you give. So some people are really touched by health issues, but others are not. And it's not because they don't care. It's more of they had a different experience. So there's other things that are more, they've got more resonation with compared to the health issue. So we all have different experiences, and it has a very direct correlation with how we give and how we think later on in life.
Yeah. Okay. So you are currently in the States, as you said, also still in academia. Do you want to maybe share with us what's sort of the most exciting, whether it's current or upcoming, projects that you are working on, amazing things that your students are doing? What's kind of on the radar for you at this moment?
Yes, so it's been a year. I've spent the year adjusting to the American context and even how to teach my students here because I can't use the same approaches that I did for the students at VITS and the students here. So it's been an adaptation and adjustment and a learning curve. However, I'm still very involved in a lot of research projects that I started off before I came here. And I'm also working on collaboration. So to work with other institutions in the States and in Canada, we have good relationships there as well to try and make sure that we bring African content here. So my mission is to be that African export, to make sure that I bring all the knowledge from back home, the experiences from back home into the curriculum to here as well, into the curriculum here as well, but also empower students with the knowledge of how we do things back home. So that's my mission. So every project that I'm working on, the research projects that I'm working on, it's mainly collaborative efforts with other institutions and also getting those institutions to work with my former institution and encourage intercontinental, transatlantic, can we call it that? Transatlantic collaborations.
That sounds amazing. Well, I did say that the time was going to move really, really fast. I'm wondering, I'm seeing a couple of people in the room still with us, so I would love to open up for Q&A, unless you had received sort of questions that were submitted prior that I might not have asked.
Yeah, so there was a request that the chat function is disabled. I think it should be fine now if anybody wants to test
Okay,
that.
yeah, I see. Got a question from George. Hi, George. So George is a fellow community member from Brand the Change. He's based in Canada. His question is, how do you see African giving apply in accelerating climate change impacts in a global perspective? That's really quite a powerful question, actually, considering we are in the middle of September and what should have sprung as spring for us became snowfall in September. So we
Yeah,
just
I
came
heard
out of
about
a
that.
crazy winter chill over the past couple of days. So yeah, just to answer George's question, how do you see African giving apply in accelerating climate change impacts in a global perspective?
It's a very pertinent issue, George, and I actually feel like some of the African solutions will go a long way to helping us to mitigate against climate change impacts. By the way, weather patterns and changes are not new. So you'll find that indigenous systems sort of had coping mechanisms to deal with some of the things that we face. So our great grandparents, our ancestors, they were able to read the weather and they were even able to adapt and work in accordance with nature. So if they see that there's a lot of rainfall that we're receiving or the rains are late, they sort of knew what kind of crop to plant and what to do to prepare for that. They could tell that, you know what, it's going to be a dry season this year just by the way that they monitor the landscape and they read the signs from nature. So if you know it's going to be dry, they even knew what to do to be able to mitigate against that. The problem and the challenge is, and maybe this is even another knowledge gap that we need to invest in is that a lot of that knowledge is going away. That generation has passed on, and the few that are left, we need to tap into that knowledge. Our generation and our kids, they don't know anything. Like, on a serious note, they don't know anything because we'd never learned some of that indigenous knowledge systems. So I feel like it could hold a lot of clues in adaptation, and also it will be easier to implement, especially within the African context, because it's things that our ancestors, our forefathers did. So it shouldn't be too resource intensive to be able to apply that solution. I mean, it's not just in Africa. I think someone shared once that in Fiji and these areas where they get a lot of hurricanes and extreme weather events as well, their indigenous knowledge teaches them how to see that the water levels are going to be coming and where to go and what to do and all of that. So there's quite a deep wealth of knowledge that could be a very easy solution for us to mitigate against climate change. We also find that we are not fully documenting some of these experiences. So there's some opportunity for researchers as well to try and tap into those indigenous systems before we lose that generation that has this wealth of information. So yes, African solutions could go a long way. African giving can go a long way as well, because like I said, we don't need a wealth of resources. We have traditionally supported one another peer to peer at our same level. So if you are able to implement a good solution, people will spread that knowledge to each other. They will train each other without even having fancy workshops or fancy investments to get behavioral change through. So I truly think it could be a solution.
So importantly, to really look at how we are bringing in indigenous knowledge systems in climate adaptation and mitigation strategies. But specifically when it comes to giving, is there something from an indigenous perspective that you think kind of, is something that we would need to lean into?
Yes, remember, giving is not giving money only. It's not about money. You can give your time. You can also give your resources. You can give your knowledge. So sharing that information, sharing those resources could be the key that we need. So if you create a new solution to your society, if people are able to share information with one another, provide support to one another, your solution becomes a success because it's spread out. You've even encouraged a behavioral change without investing money into it. So it's a key because if you can get it right with people on the ground, they can do the work for you and share the information with one another and rally the masses, so to speak, to get more people onto this behavioral change boat. So it's a key that is not fully tapped into. It's a low cost key, I would say, because you wouldn't need like hectic workshops or hectic training sessions if you manage to get the people on board.
Yeah, okay. I see another question from the chat. This is from Lechumusa. We see how dialogue is a vital yet underappreciated tool in development and resource mobilization. So what are some of the ways that you believe we can embrace a culture or practice of dialogue in our work and communities?
So engaging in dialogue is an African practice. If you think about the societies where you come from, how do you guys solve problems at your place in your community or society, we generally come together. We put our heads together. You can have a hotla, you can have an imbizo, you bring all the different forces to be able to talk through the issues. Now, there's an element of implementation or a follow-through post that dialogue, which, by the way, our indigenous ways are very good at doing. Because if you go to a hotla, most of the time you allow the two parties who are affected to talk through the issues. Then there's always someone who's appointed to solve that, or maybe to be the mediator, or to oversee that this particular action is done. So you develop like an action list of who's going to do what. So it's in our way of being to talk to one another. It's in our way of being to bring heads together as societies. But perhaps we need to go back to our way of being and embrace follow through support, post that dialogue, follow through support to make sure that we achieve the things that we agreed on in that hotla or that get together that we've put in with our communities. So it's in us. We just need to tap into those indigenous ways of doing things.
Yeah. You've got a Vitsi. Our Bakwe from
Welcome.
Joburg.
Yeah.
And I think understandably as well, saying that we all have a role to play in whatever way that we can, because all of these things are affecting us in different ways. But the question is, where then does one start in terms of making a contribution towards these issues? How do we draw from the indigenous knowledge of parents, grandparents, and so on? And I think it's talking to that intergenerational divide that we see surface through in the workplace as much as it does at home. But how do we kind of reconcile that so that we are actually working a lot more closely together across generational lines?
And also, how do we do it quickly before you lose them? I mean, most people have lost their grandparents already. I have regrets. I wish I had spent I had a good relationship with my grandparents, but I wish I had spent more time with them, because my grandmother, so my maternal grandmother, she knew I was pregnant before I knew I was pregnant. So we spent not even a long time. I think it was a graduation party and she was there. She just took one look at me, and then she went to my mom and she told her, ask her how far along she is. And guess what? I was pregnant. I was a couple of weeks pregnant. So I found it so fascinating. Here's someone who's not a lab technician. She didn't even go to high school. She's not a scientist, but just by looking at someone, she can predict so accurately what's going on in their body. So I did ask her, I asked her, how did you know? And she said she could tell through the ears. So apparently, when you're pregnant, your ears are different. So things like that. If I had spent a bit more time to understand, okay, what do the ears look like? How are you able to see it so accurately with your eyes, you know? So that's her, but also they know how to heal things. Those of you that have been young mothers, you always call your grandparents or your parents, your mom, to come and assist you. They sort of even know like what kind of roots and what kind of herbs you should use to heal whatever ailment, and what to do to the baby if they're behaving in a certain way. Not all of that is not coming from a textbook. It's things that they also learned from their own parents. So I would say we need to, make hay whilst the sun still shines. Spend time with your grandparents if you're still lucky to have them. Spend time with your elders if you're still lucky to have them. Some of them can't write, but they are very good at storytelling. They are very good at sharing some of their experiences and why they know what they know. And if you do learn something special that we all don't know about, please share it with everybody. Share that knowledge that you've gained from your elders with everybody, document it, so that 20 years later, other people can be able to tap into that experience that you had. If most people don't know this, but long time ago, during the slave trade issue, they believe that it was the Africans that brought the concept of a vaccine to the Americas, because there were some illnesses that were doing the rounds, and some of the African slaves told them that you actually need to ingest that disease so that your body can develop the antibodies from it. So they knew from their homes where they came from so many years ago that you need to ingest that virus or ingest that bacteria that's going around so your body can develop the immunity. And from there, we managed to develop all sorts of vaccines that have saved numerous lives to this day. So if you do learn something from your elders, please put it down, give credit to those elders. Let that information be available online so we can access it as well in future.
That's great. Just a comment from Nabil, also in Pittsburgh. Just an appreciation for the knowledge and experience that you are sharing. For the sake of also just respecting and honoring everybody's time, I know we need to wrap up, but I think that we are living in a world where a lot of things really do feel overwhelming. There are so many challenges, so many problems, so many things that seem insurmountable. And you kind of want to think, where do I put my energy? Where do I apply myself best to make a difference? If you are that person and you are not quite clear on where to kind of invest yourself in terms of improving your social impact footprint, what are sort of the 2 or 3 things that you would say we need to look at or we need to start thinking about as individuals, that in your own corner of the world, you are actually starting to do something tangible, measurable, or intentional around your social impact footprint?
Yeah. So you need to do it where you are in the industry that you are in. Put on the shoes that fit you, right? And what I mean by that, don't try to, create this whole new movement or to be something that you are not, or to do things that you are not comfortable with. All of us have different skills, have different abilities. We have different industries that we are exposed to. So right there where you are, with the shoes that fit you, you can make a difference. So if you are a banker, if you're working in the banking space, you're working in finance, so you're working with helping people to get loans or helping people to gain access to financial resources. What are some of the issues with access to financial resources right now? I can tell you there are numerous issues that are facing your very industry. So if the shoe fits for you in the finance sector, that's where you need to apply your mind. You don't need to be like, okay, I'm leaving all of this. I'm now going to go to a nonprofit organization, or I'm going to go and teach or whatever. You don't need to be someone else. You don't need to change your industry. Look at the gaps that you have in your very own industry, what you enjoy doing, what you are good at doing, and see how you can do it better or differently to serve the people that you work with. If you I'm trying to think, what are the jobs out there? If you are a medical doctor, you are working with people on a daily basis who are facing issues of poor health, or maybe even difficulty with access to health. How can you do your job better to be more inclusive, to help these people not only heal from the ailment that they have, but also transform themselves to be able to be productive members of society. So what role can you play as their healthcare provider? If you working in a school, you're working with young children or old children, you are exposed to these lives on a daily basis. What are some of the issues in education that you can do different?
Did we lose you, Kiratilwe?
Hello?
Yeah, you're back.
Okay. All right. So I was saying, whatever industry you are in, where you are with your abilities, see how you can apply it where you are. You don't need to change yourself or to do anything drastic other than what you are exposed to.
I see another question from Mulugi. What is your take on the current education setup in Africa? Do you think it is contributing actively to address our socioeconomic challenges? Example, high unemployment. It's a big enabler of the challenges that we face. So what do you as an educator or with the institutions that you are working at, how are you sort of, working to close those gaps?
So this has actually been my personal mission. So I always, because I'm an educator, so I work with the older kids, people who are in university. Traditionally, university has been a place where you go there and just receive all this theory and information, and then you go on your way and hope that you can find a job afterwards. But I always try to bring in practical elements in my teaching as well. So yes, you are learning this, but how can you use it in a job, or how can you use it in industry? You are learning this, but let's speak to some people who are doing this very work that I'm teaching you about, so you can see how it applies in real life. Curriculums also need to adapt. We were actually talking about this at VIT before I left, that we also need to adapt the curriculum to bring in African context into it, to bring in issues that face us on this day, not what used to happen 200 years ago or 100 years ago, but what are the issues that are happening in the country and continent now that you can start thinking about or prepare yourself. So we need to prepare students for success when they get out into the real world, but not only to succeed in doing a job, but to succeed as innovators and change makers. Because now that you've learned all these practices, you've learned all these principles and concepts in your studies, it should give you a toolkit for you to be able to do your job differently once you get out into real life, or create your own business, create your own social enterprise with the tools and skills that we've shown you in your education.
Yeah. So I think it is that, how are we bridging the divide by bringing knowledge closer to practice. Dr. K, you and I, we work specifically through a creative collaboration. Do you find that it's getting easier to give visibility to the kind of work that is contributing to, better social impact or enhanced social impact across the education sector? How do you see that sort of playing out?
Yeah, so it's been a journey. It took a couple of months. It's been a journey, but what it helped is to create my North Star. So I was actually introduced to this whole thing by my sister. She runs a business that works on communications and online media, and she said, it's so important as well for academics to have a professional online profile. So I thought, okay, yeah, that sounds good. But you don't do it overnight. It took a couple of months to get to this point, and it helped me to highlight the core. Once you have your core, you know what projects you can accept, and you can even know what to reject. Because if it's not contributing to the core, then it's not beneficial, so to speak. So it helped me to identify my boundaries and my priorities and pillars as well. And sometimes I go back as well to that page to look at the brand promise. What is it that I promise to deliver people that I work with, my students, my even practitioners as well? What do I promise to give you? So that when I plan your content, when I plan interactions with you, I'm able to deliver on that promise as well. So I recommend it for everybody. You need to have your North Star, because we get so overwhelmed. We take on so many things. You end up forgetting what you stand for, and like, how did I get here? And why do I have so many things on my plate? If you sift through everything, you'll actually realize that 60% of those things are not relevant or not contributing to who the kind of person that you're trying to become.
Great. So in closing, just sort of one critical insight that you carry with you, something that we can take away from this fireside chat that we had today. What's the one thing you want us to remember?
I think the one thing that I want you to remember is that everybody is a change maker. The world needs you. The world is hiring, and we want you exactly as you are. So we don't see people as homogeneous, and you are not homogeneous as well. So you have your own abilities and skills, your own experiences that are very important to the future of everybody, the continent, the country, even globally. So how can you be the best version of yourself in your space, the industry that you're in the country that you are living in, with the people that you are surrounded by? How can you be a positive influence to your network? How can you be a positive influence to your work, and do things a bit differently to increase a social impact wherever you are? That's the one thing that I hope everybody will take out today.
Great. Thank you so much. That brings us to the top of the hour. And I just want to encourage everybody, if you really want to connect even more with Dr. Geratilwe, the key kindler, as some may know her, please be sure to reach out to her. You can find her online at geratilwe.com and all of her other social media channels as well. She's available. She's doing masterclasses. She's doing different projects in the private sector as well as in academia. She's open for speaking engagements. So you really want to kind of connect with her to share more insights and to expand on some of what she's shared today. Please visit the Key Kindler at www.geratilwe.com. And thank you so much for everybody who was able to join. We will also share a recording if you want to reflect on some of what we shared today. And it's been an amazing discussion with you. I know they call you Dr. Gira, some of them. We tend to call you by your full name, but thank you so much for availing yourself today. It's a conversation that was a long time coming, so I'm really glad that we done it. Really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much, everybody who was here.
Thank you, everyone. I appreciate you all.
Sarah, Obakwe, George, Letu, and so many more. Thanks to everybody.
Okay.
Have a great morning and a great afternoon wherever you are.